Hello, this is Rob Mazak, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by Mazak, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. All right. Hello, everyone. I wanted to spend some time tonight or today, depends on where you're at, talking a little bit about religion. And religion in a way that it seems that more recently that a lot of information and videos and talk and discussions and articles have been coming out that relate to the revelation, perhaps that's talked about in the Bible, the Antichrist, the 7 years of peace, the prophets showing up, kind of like that return of the Messiah kind of time. And I know this is not new. This has been discussed and talked about for centuries, with the expectation that a Messiah is coming back. And it depends on which religion you align with that would determine which Messiah we're speaking of. But a Messiah nonetheless, a Messiah that is supposed to be a savior for us to return after the creation of mankind in a very short or small nutshell of explanation. And of course, many times throughout our history, there have been a lot of people that have come forth claiming to be the Messiah or a prophet or something of the sort, and convincing many, many people that that's the case. And I'm not saying that these people are not in some way a messenger or someone that may be sent or picked by God or some spiritual entity, depending on what you believe, of course, like we already spoke about. I think you have to have a little discernment when you look at these things and be careful that you don't get caught up in beliefs that are not necessarily aligned with you simply because someone is very intelligent and can seem to answer things in a very philosophical way and without any stuttering, without any hesitation. And it seems like they are very well educated and linked to the information. And I'm speaking of one in particular individual most recently, but before I talk about that person, I wanted to talk about a dream that I had a few nights ago. And dreams are really kind of cool because when you go to sleep at night, your mind does not like to be silent. It always wants to create a reality for you. Even when you're sleeping, it feels like its job is to continue to create reality for you. And you can take that however you like, but it does. And, I don't know if that's really what dreams are about. Some of the science would suggest that that's the way it is. In my opinion, my experience, dreams are really messages from the other side. I do believe it does come from what most people would call the spiritual realm. You can give that name whatever you like. I do believe it comes from beyond us, beyond this reality. And I do believe that dreams are given to us as messages, sometimes foresight. A lot of people I know have had dreams and routinely actually where they dream something and then it actually comes true. Now I don't know if that's because they are aligning with the truth or what's coming or how it shows up. I'm not sure. However, in my experience, this is my experience only, and probably some others, I do believe that the spiritual realm, the other side, does not really necessarily speak the same language as we do, a much higher level language, or at least a much different language. And maybe it's not even a language like we understand languages. However, I do believe that they generally need to show us in symbology, pictures. Sometimes it's direct words and thoughts, but my experience at least is that it's normally like watching a movie or being in another life or an experience or seeing symbology or things in your dream that tend to mean something. And so I've just learned to go research these things when I have a dream and try to understand what the symbology means. And there's a lot of definitions out there and ways of looking at different symbology in dreams. On the internet, there's just lots and lots of ways and interpretations. But you really have to do is figure out what the symbology resonates for you when you're reading it, however it is that you get your intuitive knowing, then that really is what you should settle on. And for example, like I use this example a lot. So water in dreams is generally about your emotions in some way. Are you neck deep in it? Are you on a boat? Are you, in a shower? Are you in the rain? Are you whatever? And so you kind of have to figure out what it all really means and take that message. And then when you become familiar with the symbology as it's meant for you or how you decipher it, then you begin to create a common language between you and the other side, spiritual realm, if you will. And so I've done that a lot in my lifetime. And, every now and then I get some symbology that just doesn't make any sense, at least right away. And sometimes, even when you kind of figure out what you think it means, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for it to manifest to help you understand what it is or why you've gotten that. So I had a dream the other night, and it was a much different one. This one was I had a speaking role, and the person or the entity in my dream was also speaking to me. It was almost as if I was actually there. It felt like a real life experience in the same body that I have, in a uniform I normally wear every day for work, still in the military after 30 years. And I remember I was in a house. I don't know if it was any house that I had been in before, but that's not really, it really doesn't mean anything per se in this, I don't think, or has it have any relevance. But I remember walking from one part of the room into another part or into another room, and I heard a voice as clear as if someone was in the room here with me right now saying these words. He said, "Robert, I'm in the room with you." And I remember turning around and looking at him, and he said, "My name is Bernard, and you're going to go to hell." And I remember saying something I would normally not say in this life. I said, "Well, I hope I do." And what was really odd is then he went from being this kind of a pudgy older man to this shadowy figure. They transformed right in front of me. And that was kind of the end of what I remember of this dream. And it was very significant. I remember waking up directly after that and getting the feeling that there was an entity in this place where I live in my RV. And I say an entity in my space, my room, it's because that's how I learned originally to connect with entities or know they were around, is I could feel it. It was kind of a physical sensation, sort of like getting tinglies all over your body. I call it being lit up. And that's exactly what was happening. I don't know that I stayed awake too long, but I was kind of laid there for a while and was trying to make sense of it. And I kind of tossed around what this might mean. I went and looked up some things, and the name Bernard, the spiritual meaning of Bernard, and there's a lot of those out there. But I think the summary of that name is just like it's a spiritual protector, a very powerful person in the realm of spirituality, very strong protector. A bear is what one of the definitions talks about. And then, but I couldn't really figure out how that linked with this shadowy figure. And the more I talked about it with a colleague of mine, kind of bantered back and forth, I began to really realize that what I was getting as a message was that there was going to be a false prophet show up on the scene. But behind him, behind the actual energy of this person, was not this spiritual protector, this bear, this enlightened one, so to speak, but this shadowy, dark figure, which could equate to most people as evil or demonic, or simply just an entity that is not enlightened in the way that we would consider good beings to be. So there's a lot of names you could give it. You could talk about it being the devil or a demon or something of the sort. But really, a shadow of a man or shadow of the man. In other words, it was an entity that was representing itself as something different to try to fool me in this instance. I was trying to also kind of toy around with why I would say that I hope I would go to hell. And eventually the intuitive message came back through, or the intuition kicked in, and the message was more aligned with the fact that the reason I said that in my dream is because I was challenging this particular guy named Bernard, or this entity in my dream, and not kind of turning around with my tail between my legs and challenging him. It was a statement to show and say and affirm that I was not afraid of his threats. Okay, I kind of settled on that, and I kind of left it alone after that. Yesterday, I was flipping through TikTok. I do that sometimes, and it's, you can get stuck on an algorithm, as I've talked about before. A lot of the same kind of content will keep coming up. If you linger on a video, say, of someone saving a puppy that was found in the frozen snow, and then next thing you know, every story is the same, or all the stories align with that. Well, somehow or another, I got onto this algorithm or this video of a guy claiming to be the Mahdi, which I don't entirely understand what that means, but it is basically, he was claiming that I don't think he was claiming he was the Messiah, but a very specifically chosen successor in the line of Muhammad, I believe. I may have that story wrong. But this guy, apparently, I don't know his real name, but he is an American born Egyptian or an Egyptian born American. Anyway, he speaks English very well, and it sounds like it's Egyptian that he's speaking. I believe that's what it is. I could be wrong, but it is some type of language like that. This man is very, very straightforward, and he's a little strange in my opinion because he wears a black knit cap. Instead of rolling it up like most people, it comes down and it goes over his ears. Every video that he's in is this hat, and all of his followers are wearing the same type of hat. And so it's very strange. And so he is gaining a lot of followers, and he is really making a stir. And the amount of video and content that he has put out is quite amazing. I mean, he is kind of mesmerizing to listen to because he's coming from me being an American that only speaks English. That Egyptian language or whatever it is he's speaking is sounds very fancy, and it makes it sound like he's more intelligent. But he knows what he's talking about. He's very knowledgeable about the questions he's asked and the things that he's putting out. He understands the Quran and the Bible and many religious texts and books and writings and history. And I don't know if that's because he's studied all this time or he's simply been given this as a gift. But what he sounds like to me, too, is what I would consider most people to be like if they were a channeler. And there's a lot of channelers out there. You have, I mean, I do some of that. I know a lot of people that do that. And it's just like a channel or a channeler is someone that can stream information from quote unquote the other side, from somewhere that is not within your own consciousness, but coming from outside of you. And a lot of times you don't have necessarily any understanding of what's coming out of your mouth or why it's coming out, but it does. And it's very eloquent and very interesting, and usually something that at least I find I would not normally say or think or come up with or knew before I said that. And so it is very similar. I'm not comparing myself to him. I'm just saying that I understand channeling because I can do that, and I know many people that can. And it is very similar to that. And it's kind of the tone of his voice and the rhythm, and it's just kind of a way that you can tell that somebody can do that. And I don't really care in a lot of ways. My opinion is it doesn't matter what somebody is out there doing, and that's okay. And this has happened through many decades and millennia in our history where people have gathered followers claiming to know things that are coming, claiming to know what the dates are, when Christ is coming or the Messiah is returning, only to find out that that's not true. I mean, I've heard so many people, even channelers for that matter, that spout off information and give dates, and it is totally wrong or it doesn't come true. And so I think you have to be really careful about, even if you do get information from the other side, that you let people know that this information is something that you can't prove, is something that you can't verify. You just have to take it with a grain of salt. And everything that I say, I will say the same thing on almost all my podcasts is I don't want you to believe what I say. I don't want you to believe the visions and the dreams and the messages I get that I put on these podcasts. I don't want you to believe that. I want you to maybe just listen to it and see if it resonates with you, and maybe do your own research and your own meditation if it's interesting and it aligns with you. And then you can figure out if that it makes any sense to you and you want to pursue anything that's put out by myself in any of these podcasts. And so I don't want you to believe me. That's the way it should be, right? Because I am a human being, and no matter how pure any messages that might come through me or others, there's still a human dynamic in it. You have to be careful with anything you hear, like I said, even from me. This man is very, very almost like I want to hear what he has to say because he's so intelligent and he speaks so well, is very well spoken in his native language and in English. And I mean, I don't speak that language, but it sounds so cool. And I'm sure it's very compelling for a lot of people, but it seems to be gathering a huge following, especially now with the death of the Pope. And I don't know at this point if they've chosen another one. I'm not sure. I haven't really paid much attention to that. It's like everybody, or especially this person, is taking advantage of the journey or the thrust to get followers in his proclamation now that the Pope has died, and whether there's another one or not, he is taking advantage of that and people at a time that are questioning many things. Is the Antichrist here? Is all the things that is happening with our new president the end of the world or the beginning of the end of the world? Is the peace process that's being talked about what's written in, Revelations and prophecy and all these things? I mean, it's like everybody is jumping on the bandwagon. And I've heard so many preachers in the Christian denominations, prophesy things about dates and things that are coming for them to have to walk backwards on that statement. And a lot of people still follow those people, even though they're making mistakes and they're saying things that they can't prove. Even if you believe in the scriptures and the writings, the religious writings, I think all of them, no matter what religion you adhere to or read or research or understand, I think they all say the same basic thing, that no one will know the time or the day or the year of the return of the Messiah. So if you have anybody out there that is saying those things and giving dates and giving times and giving ideas about the return, I personally would be careful about that and listening to that person and make up your own mind about it. I mean, if you believe that and what they're saying, very cool. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying I would be mindful. I was a little more attracted to his speeches, his talks, until I heard something. And this comes from personal experience. In one of his TikToks that I saw, he said that everybody, to ensure that they would be, I'm kind of paraphrase, but being safe and saved from the wrath that is coming, is that they should sell all their belongings and put the revenue from those belongings towards this effort. Now, where have we heard that many times in history? Only for people to be deceived and left out, hung out to dry. And so I have some personal experience with this. So as a kid, I was raised from about 8 years old till I was 18 in what most people would consider a religious commune. Very similar to the Jim Jones in Guyana idea, where it was communism by definition, where everybody worked for the good of the whole. In essence, it started out really well, good idea. Some people are good at this, other people are good at that. Some people work, some people cook, some people watch the kids. It was all for the community effort. And it just really got out of hand, because when people begin to listen and follow and hang on every word you say, it's just normal human reaction to eventually let that go to your head. And power within a human, or the ability to have power over people and influence, can, and many times does, go astray, and it becomes a really big problem, and a lot of abuses happen and things just are just not what they should be. And this very thing happened to me and my family, my siblings, my parents, everybody, where we literally, everything that we owned when we moved into this particular community, and it was in Houston, Texas. I won't name the name, not important. But I remember that my house that my father purchased, which I think the church was paying the note on, there was 23 people in my house, and 8 of us were actual family. The church decided who lived in that house and who worked and who did whatever. There was no decisions made by anybody. They were made by the elders. And then later on in my time, we moved to a different state under the same umbrella. Same thing. We showed up with a U-Haul with all the belongings that we had, beds, clothes, whatever. I remember pulling into that compound. That this one was an actual compound. It's not anymore. It was sold off, and big fancy houses are built on it now. But I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was a long time ago. I remember we pulled up in there, and we were directed to basically turn over the keys to one of the cars that we brought, and they opened up the back of the U-Haul, and they distributed everything that would belong to us to the needs of everybody in that community, in that compound. Now that sounds like a really good idea. Yes, help everybody else out for the good of the whole. However, when you find yourself in those situations, just like I did and my family did, then you really have a big problem, because if you want to leave, which we were free to leave. I mean, there was no gates, there's no fences, no locks. It was more of an emotional prison, because my father, after being there in this particular place for, I don't know, around a year, he really wanted out. I mean, it was horrible. I could tell you stories. I won't tell you all the stories. That's not important. But he wanted out so bad. But he could leave. He could leave. We could all leave. But we had no money. We had no car. We had no belongings. So how are you supposed to leave when they, quote unquote, got you by the you know what? We eventually got out of it, and it still was a struggle, and it took a long time. And many of my family members probably still struggle. And it's just an experience that I would not recommend to anybody. Because even a colleague of mine was talking about somebody that was starting up this compound for the good of the whole and community, and nobody has to work, and everybody just has to come in and contribute. And, those always seem to go wrong. They always seem to go bad. I'm not saying that everyone that's out there has gone bad, but the tendency for us human beings is to let power go to our heads. With great power comes great responsibility. That's what Spider-Man said, right? So I would encourage you guys to really do your research. If you find somebody like this Nadi, who's claiming to be the Nadi, whatever that means, I'm sorry, I didn't do enough research, but I would really do your research, dig in and find out who this person is, what he's trying to say, and make sure that it's really going to be something you want to partake in. Especially when somebody says you should sell all your stuff, come into the fold, into the community, and contribute all your earnings to this effort. Then what are you left with if it goes bad? You are then under the complete control of whomever is putting this community together. You absolutely are. And could you leave? I'm sure you could leave whatever it is he's doing, putting together this ark or something. And yes, you could walk away, but if you've sold everything and you gave all your money up, what are you going to do? Most people barely survive today, much less give away everything and have something to fall back on. Be careful, guys, because there are a lot of people out there that are taking advantage of a lot of things that seem to be signs, appear to be signs that were written many thousands of years ago, and in some cases beyond Christianity, even, thousands and thousands of years before that. And I'm not saying that these people are not getting correct information. I'm just saying make sure, be certain, absolutely certain before you step into those arenas that you are doing your research and your homework and understanding what you're getting into. I have made those mistakes before. I mean, I was a kid, I didn't have a choice. Would never recommend that as an adult. Unless you just absolutely don't have anything left and you're down on your luck and you got out of this life and maybe this is your last straw. I get it. There's probably times and places for that. But for the average person that is working and getting along in life, it may not be. Nobody really knows the dates of things and times and all those things. I've done that before where I've given out dates of when things should be happening. And granted, it turns out that on a couple of those occasions, the dates and the months were absolutely right, but the year was not. no, I don't think anybody gets clear, absolute, definitive dates and times about what's coming, especially when you're talking about a Savior coming back. As it's written, it should not be known and it will not be known. So are there people out there saying that it will? Who knows? Anyway, I will digress. I just wanted to kind of talk about that and help everybody understand that there's a lot of things going on out there that you got to be careful about and step carefully if you're going to go into these arenas, and understand that these people may or may not be the people they claim to be. And so it is very easy in this world today to fool people. It's always been easy to fool people, but even more so today. All right, so I encourage you guys to go to my website. So I do like to work with people. I do like to talk to people. I too do some things that are probably more risque, I guess you'd say. You know, I'm a psychic and a medium, as you heard in the beginning of this podcast. But in helping others, however that looks, in whatever modality you use, in whatever arena you use it, when you help others, you also learn. And so it has really been an enriching experience over the last 10 years or so in this business model that I work in, that I set up, that I've learned so many things from others, from those that I've worked with, those that I've helped, those that have helped me, those that have done readings and things for me. And so it is a very wonderful experience to work with people. I do look forward to working with you. I do look forward to hearing from you. Check out my website at lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Stay strong and live your life.